Okay, guys, anytime I come up with something I think is significant that might help or help your tone, I mean, it's helped mine, so I figure if it's helping mine, it could help yours. And, we all get set in our ways. Me especially, being older. I'm OCD. I get certain ideas and I don't want to change no matter what people tell me. But I try to be open-minded, and I was open-minded. Recently, I've got a few tips today. One of them is, if you're going to do your own nut work, which you've seen me do some videos on messing with my nuts. It kind of sounds funny, but either way. There's my nut. That's a brand new nut that I had made, and the whole story is based off of this nut right now. And I got a couple of tone tips on the Fuzz face and the Vibe baby, how I get fairly decent tone. But what happened was, I was moving this thing side to side just a hair, that way and this way, trying to get these strings lined up to the frets on the edges, because Strats are notorious for having the strings drop off the edge while you're playing if you don't have them set perfectly. And I'm not real sure why they always were so close, but these guitars are playing fine. Either way, I had this thing, I said, okay, I want to get a solid bond, so I'm going to use my water-thin super glue, which is the old style stuff that's super tough that I get from Stuart McDonald, which is where you can get all your luthier supplies. Stu-Mac, they call it. And so I was trying to knock this out with a hammer and a piece of wood, and that's why they say just use a couple of drops of white glue, and I water it down just to make it a little thinner. Anyway, it wasn't coming out after I'd super glued it in there, and I wanted to move it just a fraction of an inch. Just not even enough to mess with. That's how OCD I am, but I just wanted it to be perfect. So I tap it, and I thought, okay, well, I have to give it another good tap. I tapped it, and I was just I didn't have it blocked all the way across with a piece of wood. I was kind of at a point, or a smaller section here. Either way, I sheared the nut off. And that was a nut that I'd stolen off of that guitar, so I said, well, crap, I guess I'm forced now to have a new nut made. So I took it into a guy down towards New Orleans. Hadn't been to him probably in 10 years, who knows how long. Took it to him, told him what the problem was. This thing wasn't staying in tune, and I'd sheared off the nut. There was still a piece of the nut in there I couldn't get out, so I just let him take care of it. He made this nut, and now the guitar, I can dive bomb this thing all day long. I told him I wanted to say, I'm dive. It's very manageable now. I told him the strings were hanging up. So the point of this story is, new nuts do make a difference. Even if you got a good old one, and I don't know, just him making the new one for this guitar, it fits snug, and it works great. So the guitar's working. It's tolerable now. I can play live. I can wang it all day long. It might go a little bit out of tune occasionally. I mean, if you listen to Hendrix, sometimes he was so out of tune it was crazy. But he was able to tune on the fly so fast that it didn't last very long usually. But he had issues with his tremolo too. But it's working about as good as it can work. So that one was so good, I took this one in, the black one, and had him make a new nut on this. Now this one was a little wider just because of the older slot. This is 64. I'd prefer a narrower nut just so that there's less stuff to grab the strings. But this one works pretty good too. I mean, it used to be flawless, and then it started acting up, and I started messing with it, so I said, screw it, I'll just make a new one on this one. Turned out good. But here's the tip. Besides, don't super glue your nuts in. You're gonna break it trying to get it out. But they said, okay, we're going to change strings. So what strings do you use? And I said, well, I use all kinds of different strings, but either way, said I've been using cobalts, the Ernie Ball cobalts. He said, well, I don't carry the cobalts. I've got Diodario. I said 10 to 52. He said, yeah, I've got that in Diodario. I said, okay, well. And he said, they're good strings. I said, okay, well, use those then. At least we'll get the slots right on the nut. Well, that's this set right here, the Diodario EXL 140. Whoops. The 3D on this just means 3-pack. You can buy the 3 sets right there. I bought these at Amazon, I think, for $12. So the $4 a set, which is pretty good deal. But you know, Diodario has been around forever, and you guys probably have. I'm sure I've had comments when I say, "Oh, I use pyramid strings. I use cobalts. I've tried these D'Angelicos from a tip from you guys." But I know I've had people say, "Well, I just use Diodario," and I just kind of blew it off because I'd used them before. But these must be new. Because when I got that guitar back, I was really impressed with the way those strings sounded. And when I went and got this one done, I had the same set put on it. And this guitar sounds better. So I'm just telling you that you might want to give these things a shot. Right now, I've completely switched. I think I'm going to use these on everything. But I started doing some research of their plant. They're out of New York. Some Italians that started over 100 years ago. And they've got a pretty high-tech plant up there. And I was always under the impression that there was one plant or 2 plants in the country. That's what they used to tell us. That made all the strings for everybody. They just relabeled them for whoever. And I don't know if that's true or not, because Diodario makes their own strings. They might make them for other people, but these strings are hot. And when it says here, experience the amazingly bright tone, perfect intonation, stellar magnetic output, they're not kidding. These things sound really good. And I mean, they're kind of what you would want out of the cobalts. I'm starting to think that cobalts may have been an answer to these strings. I don't know who came out first, but cobalts haven't been out very long. And I think these have been out longer. These things are more balanced. The cobalts probably have too much output. These things are just about perfect as far as output. They have a lot of bass and a lot of brightness, so they've got everything. And right now, that's my tone tip is I'm going to straight pure amp and not much effects at all. That's what. Here, I'm gonna have to put this up here. I knew this was gonna end up being long-winded. Sorry about that, but it's hard to. This is the black guitar with these new strings, and it just has a really nice tone. Now, this is the 59 Bassman, the one that you can see right there. Just amp. It's on about 3.5. This is the 60. 60 has a little more headroom to it. But that's just amp. And that was my last point here, is that if you can get your tone to where you're not using effects and you're just using the amp, that's where you're going to get your best tone. That's just amp. And if I want to kick in the fuzz here. I don't know. I got so much to talk about. It's probably going to take forever. But either way, just try to keep your effects down to a minimum. And with these strings, it seems to help me a little bit. I get a little more drive on the amp. But just want to talk about setting my ways. I always have this thing cranked up, so it's kind of hard to get unity gain through my fuzz. So I have learned to turn the volume down a little bit. But what I discussed with the guy that builds in Seattle, builds these Vibe babies, he watches, you know, all of Hendrix videos just like we do, and Hendrix, if you look at his big fuzz face, he had that thing turned upside down, and he had those moccasins on a lot of times. He was most likely, and I think it even shows in the Woodstock video of him moving his volume on the fuzz face with his foot. So he probably was going from unity gain to where when he wanted to just go insane to cranking this thing up. There's a huge difference between there and there. And I mean, you'd have to have some moccasins to be able to do that with your foot, I think. But you see him, he turns it over in the foot switch because he had to jump over the top of the fuzz face to get to the foot switch. So that's kind of interesting. But another thing, and another trick to my tone, and this is what the Vibe Baby manufacturer says, is the only way to nail Hendrix's tone is to have the Vibe Baby in cancel mode. Let me see if I can show you the difference here. I'm trying to do all this with one hand. Alright, I'm going to put this here. Anyway, I probably never mentioned this much, but I do have this thing on a lot. Trying to get this thing okay. That's just amp. Now the Vibe Baby is actually on, I think. See how I just barely touched it? The cancel mode is so you don't have to hit the foot switch. Well, on a real Uni-Vibe, it has a on and off on the box, and then the pedal, you can turn the vibe off by kicking it all the way down. See how it's off? That's cancel mode. And then if you want to hit it in, you don't have to hit the main box, you just hit the pedal. So, put it in cancel mode, you get a little more mid-range. See, now I'm gonna put it in true bypass and see if you can hear a difference. That's true bypass. I'm gonna kick the vibe on. Gives it a little edge there. So you get a little bump in the mid-range, just a hair, but that's what he says is one of the keys to Jimmy's tone. And so I probably never mentioned that before, but you have to have a Vibe Baby or a Uni-Vibe or something. I'm really starting to like the Vibe Baby just because it's compact. I looked at trying to get an original and they're just too bulky. So that's just the amp. Now if I wanted to go with fuzz, you know, that's one thing that's so cool about these fuzz faces, is that there really isn't a whole bunch of difference when you turn your volume down on your guitar between the fuzz and a clean amp. And see, this is where I usually have it. This is it. My guitar volume's on 7. If I turn it to 10, then it goes crazy. So it's all in a matter of getting this adjusted with your guitar volume and the amp volume. And that's about all I'm using now, and the wah-wah, you know, a little bit. Everything always sounds better without effects. So the more effects you add, the more signal you lose, the more tone out of your guitar disappears. So hopefully that helps you guys. I know, I'm sorry it was such a long-winded thing, but what was I going to tell you though? The Vibe Baby, I forgot. Alright, that's it. Talk to you later.